the Expressive Arts Department and the Cultural Affairs Department. I want to welcome you to the Charles and Edwina Milner Women in the Arts Lecture Series. Normally, Charles and Edwina would be here with us, but Saturday is their 89th birthday, and today is their 69th wedding anniversary. So let's give them a big hand anyway. But I know that they would be absolutely thrilled with this show, because this is, Ann Parker is a beautiful artist, a beautiful woman. She's only lived here in Silver City since 2018, I think like a year and a half, and she's already completely integrated into our community, knows so many people, and the show in the McCrae Gallery, if you haven't seen it, it's one of the most beautiful shows I think we've ever had in that gallery. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Ann. She didn't give me much of a bio, but I will say that her quilts have been featured in 500 art quilts and shown at the 2010 Houston Quilt Show. In 2013, she was awarded a show at the Foundry Arts Center in St. Charles, Mississippi. And this year, she was invited to exhibit at the Quilt National. But of course, the highlight for her was exhibiting at the McCrae Gallery. So let's give her a big welcome.
I'm really nervous. And I'll try not to stutter too much. And most of you people are my friends, so if I do, just forgive me. I would like to start by thanking, I can't see my notes, Edwina and Charles Milner Foundation for the Women in the Arts. I'm just so honored to be a part of this group of strong women artists. It just makes me feel wonderful. I'd like to thank Faye. I mean, she really gave me this great opportunity. She emailed me and said, you know, would you like to be one of the artists in the show? And I'm saying, yeah, and she goes, in December. So I'm thinking December 2020. And she said, no, it's December 2019, which was 7 months. So I completed 9 of the 14 quilts in 7 months. So thank you, Faye, for making me do the work. I'd like to thank Chala and Chelsea for manning the gallery, for doing all behind the scenes, for painting, for making labels, for putting up with me. As Chala says, I am a little uptight, so I'll embrace that. And I'd also like to thank Rick O'Ryan and Gay Marks, because they helped also hanging these unruly quilts. And so thank the two of you for that. Okay, so who am I? I'm Ann Parker. I am an artist. I am somebody that loves color. I've been lucky enough to have in my life some jobs that allowed me to play with color and pattern. I've designed cowboy boots, I've designed sweaters, jewelry, clothes, and I was in the tile business for about 25 years, so getting to play with tile. I'm also a traveler. I love to go to, I just love to travel. Partly because of textiles, partly because of the color, but let's not kid ourselves. It's also about the food. So I'm going to show you some images that sort of have inspired me and inform my work and just, you know, excite me and give me ideas. So this is, I have to breathe. This is in Thailand. This is actually a Hindu temple in Singapore. Vietnam. Block prints in India, drawing in the sun. In India, when I first went to India and I saw a woman in a sari that had hot pink, lime green, orange, and turquoise all on one piece of fabric, I'm like, I'm in the right place. This is also India. I think because when I was in India, it was near Holi, and so that's when they throw all the color powder on you. So I think that's what this is. I didn't ask. I just took the picture. This is in Bhutan. I mean, look at these two women's outfits. You know, they're just, the colors, the combinations are just gorgeous. This is in Ecuador, just pattern repeating. Also Ecuador. So this is a wall of skirts in Chichicastenango, Guatemala. And I saw that and I just about fell over. I mean, to me, that's so beautiful, just pattern, more and more and more and more and more. I just love that. This is in Oaxaca, Mexico. Also Oaxaca. This is back in India, but just that repeat of that pattern is just so beautiful. And again, just pattern on pattern, just constantly repeating. So now, in my life, I am a quilt maker. And what is a quilt? A quilt is made up of 3 layers. You have the quilt top, which is the pretty part. You have the batting, which is the middle, which gives it a little puffiness, and you have the backing. And it all has to be stitched together. And some people will do it by hand, and some people do it by machine. I do not quilt my quilts. I have this wonderful woman in Portland, Oregon. Her name is Nancy Stovall, and she's here. So, you know, at the end, if you guys have any questions for her about what she does to my work, you know, please feel free to ask her. I put you on the spot there. Yeah. I need a little sip of water.
So what is this? What is this pattern we're looking at? What is this? It's like a wall.
It's a wall.
It's just
It's at the Textile Museum in Oaxaca. So, how did I get to be a quilter? Well, I was actually at a yarn store one day, my other passion, and a friend of mine said there's this new fabric store around the corner. So we went down there, and it was a quilt shop, and there was this beautiful quilt on the wall, and I said to the woman, I'd like to buy that. How much is it? And she's like, it's not for sale, but you can take the class. And I'm thinking, why would I ever want to know how to quilt? And I said, no, thank you, but I would like to buy it. And she's like, here's the class information. So I thought about it, and I thought about it, and the next day I called her up and I signed up for the class. And this is the first quilt I ever made. And look, it's got hot pink, lime green, turquoise, and orange all in one piece. So this was so eye-opening to me. I was so excited to discover something that I could just play with color. I knew my way around a sewing machine, but this was something so different. And for the first few months, I worked with other people's patterns. It was my color choices, but other people's idea of what a quilt should be. This was a fun piece. This was, each square or block was its own wonderful little gem for me to make. And then I just kept making all these parts, and then it's like, oh, I guess I have to figure out how to put it all together. So, you know, lime green's my favorite color, so I had to make this piece. But I knew right away that I wanted to be able to design my own pieces. How can I figure out how to do that? I just didn't have a clue. So I kind of poked around on the internet, and I discovered Nancy Crow. She is an amazing woman. She's an amazing teacher. She's an amazing artist, an amazing quilter. She was just last year awarded Master of her Craft from the Renwick Gallery, which is part of the Smithsonian American Art Museum. She lives on 100 acres outside of Columbus. She teaches, now she's pretty much teaching 2-week classes. And she says that her classes are like a semester's worth of graduate work jammed into 2 weeks. And she's not kidding. What she teaches you is how to discover who you are as a quilter. What is your voice? And one of the things that I learned from her is that I love to make stripes. And I made tons of stripes. I would make fat stripes, skinny stripes, dark stripes, light stripes. For a while I thought, no, I'm gonna get back in the garment industry and design stripes for, people. I just, they're so much fun. I mean, there are endless possibilities with what can be done with them. And I'll spend weeks just making stripes without any idea of what I'm doing. So then what do you do with all those stripes? Well, I cut them up and make more stripes and sew it together and call it a quilt. And this particular quilt was, I had moved to Vietnam, and so I had a studio, a small room up there, and so I was allowed to experiment. I wasn't working; I was volunteering at a craft shop, but it gave me time to sort of discover who I was. This was a fun piece to do, just playing around again with more stripes. Thought I maybe like curves. Didn't like curves so much. But you gotta try, you gotta do the work. And so, it's like a lot of pieces ended up, I don't know where, but I did the work. I had to try. A lot of times I'd look at somebody else's work and then see if I could make it my, something that I would do. I look at this piece now and I'm like, gee, I sure wish I had that. I like it now. This was just made up of scraps, and it's long gone. But it's like, okay, not too bad. So here's my space I had in one of my houses in Vietnam, and I mean, look at the floor. I mean, it's a quilt. This was the funniest little sewing machine that I bought. It's like I almost had to wear earplugs with this sewing machine, but it went frontwards and backwards, and really that's all I needed. So, working again, just continuing with this making the stripes, cutting up the stripes, sewing them with other cut up stripes, kind of working in a family of color here. Continuing, just again, I don't always know what I'm gonna make. So then it's like, okay, try to figure something out. So I got this up on the wall and I thought, well, that's sort of interesting. So then I made a whole lot of more strips. So at this point, this piece was probably, I would say about 9 or 10 feet. And then here it is all sewn together. So then I thought, well, I like that, so I'm going to do another one. And so these were the stripes that I used, again, just making stripes. And this is that piece. And I really liked, at this time, again, not really just playing. And I like the way that the color kind of shifted throughout the piece. A friend of mine owns it, and she loves it and takes good care of it. So I know I can go visit it sometime.
Were you doing your own coloring?
I'm gonna get there. These are my plants. So this piece was actually the piece that was in 500 Art Quilts. It was my first published piece. And I dye my own fabric. And so this was about color gradation from light to dark, as well as color shifting to another color. So this was a fun piece to do. So again, just do the work, 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 do the work. And some pieces, you know, weren't my favorites, but again, I had to learn that, you know, what for me worked and what didn't work. So this was a series that I did, sorry, I need more water. This bullseye series. And this one I just limited myself to black and white. And I like this piece. I like how they blend into one another, and I like, I think the little, yes. And I really like this in here. And then here I was, you know, playing with color with it. I like the ends. I didn't like the middle so much. But this was, this was the first piece that I did in this series. And this is 160 inches long, and it's the only time I've ever been able to hang it. And this was my house in Vietnam, and it went really well with the couch. So again, you know, working with making the stripes, but here I'm working in more, you know, just color blocking of this. So it's like all the blues and the reds, not mixing them up. Again, not really knowing what I was going to do with it. And so then I started doing this, and now I'm living in Kerrville, Texas at this point in my life. I get around. This was sort of a Mondrian kind of a feel with curves. I don't draw. I cannot draw. And so I just immediately start putting fabric up on a wall. And you know, there are a lot of stops and starts. I'll put it up, I'll take it down, I'll put it up, I'll cry, I'll take it down. You know, it's just, that's my process. So here's that piece finished. It's never been quilted. It's folded up in my basement if anybody's interested. Here's another one doing the same idea. So this piece, so I went back to study with Nancy Crow, and I was still in this kind of piecing thing, and I was like, just like sitting at my sewing machine and just kind of like, and Nancy comes over and she looks at this and she goes, you know, this really doesn't work. I go, I know. And she goes, take it down. So I took it down, and then you know, I mean, this had taken me 3 days to get this far. And then I'm like, well, now what am I gonna do? So I did that. I just made these big stripes. And I mean, look at the little piece over on the side, how uptight it is. You know? And then these are just more beautiful and relaxed. And some of them became this quilt. So this is my take on African kente cloth, which is generally woven in roughly 4-inch strips and then sewn together to make a larger piece. And it's hanging up in my living room.
Excuse me, so are these stripes, the cross pieces are separate than the, right, you, like the blue on the second from the right, the blue, the bright blue, that came off of a long strip, and you put it horizontal. Is that right?
Okay, I'm trying to, so I will make, so let's say I made these strips right here.
Yeah.
And then and they're like 8 inches, and I cut them and I inserted this strip.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
You're welcome. So here I am dyeing some fabric. I do what's called low water immersion. And so this is 2 yards of fabric shoved into a 1-gallon Ziploc bag. And so what this squishing of the fabric does, it creates this modeling that my fabric has. And I really like it. A lot of friends of mine have washing machines that they use to create a very solid color. But I like that modeling. And when I dyed this, I kind of had a sense of what I was doing, but again, not really. So look at that, I mean, geez, I get excited just looking at all those colors. So I dyed a lot of colors, and then I wanted to work in a specific block or square. So I just made tons of these squares. I think they're 4 inches. I mixed the colors. I just did a whole bunch of them without ever, figuring out what was going on with them. And then I finally started getting them up on the wall. And when I work, I have a big flannel wall, and I use a cotton. My work's all 100% cotton, and it sticks to the flannel, so I can put it up, take it down, put it up, take it down. I don't have to pin it. And so here it's starting to, now I got the groove on where this thing's going. And here it is all sewn together. It's not quilted. But the thing I love about this piece is I love the subtlety and the shift of color on the left side, and then that real graphic look on the right side. So this is using the same block. So it's the same pattern, but used in a different manner. Bigger, disappearing that pattern so you don't really see it. It's just a modeling of color. So the next piece that I did was based on dyeing a gradation of color to black. So here you can see the red to black, yellow to black. There's a blue and a green. And it's these in-between colors that just, I love those. They're so weird. And then you can also see, all that modeling that I get, that I like. So that's the piece that came out of it, and that's using that same block. So it's like that one block you can do so many different things with. So this piece, I don't know how to explain it, because it's almost like there was a turning point in my work, maybe in me, I don't know. But up until this point, I was just a woman who quilted. And this piece, I kind of became an artist. And now I don't know what that is or how to define that, but it was something different. I had somebody ask me one time, what is it like to be a woman in the arts? And I was like, well, I don't think about that, because primarily I'm a quilter, and the majority of quilt makers are women. There are a lot of great male quilt makers out there, but the majority are women. So I fit into that group. But then moving from, fine craft to fine art, so being a quilt maker in the art world is a bit of a struggle, because a lot of people don't look at quilting as art yet. We're working on that. It's like, I really think that people are now starting to see that this is an art form. So this is the next piece that came after that. And this actually has been touring Europe and North America for the past 3 years, with a group show that Nancy Crow actually curated. And they're 50 quilts, and they're all 90 inches by 90 inches. And so this one now is in Springfield, Ohio, and it'll be coming home in April. So here I am back to making parts. And it's like, oh, let's try this. This is kind of interesting. So I made more parts and a couple more triangles. And then it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do with these things? And so I still was like into this zigzag thing. And so I was trying to fit it in there. I didn't really care for it. So I made a couple more triangles, put them together. And I made a few more triangles. Yeah, I made all the triangles. I love this piece because this piece to me reminds me of that wall of skirts. More is more is more. And I think of all the quilts I've made so far, I think this might be my most favorite. And I'm very lucky that it's hanging at the visitor center in the back offices, so go take a look. So I figured, well, if triangles look good, diamonds are gonna look good too. And again, trying to fit them in that zigzag. But that didn't please my eye, but that did. So I'm like, okay. So just keep making more strips and stripes, and this piece is in the gallery, so you'll be able to see it when we go over there. And it's like, for me, I don't plan things out, so I just, it's like 4 pieces of scrap fabric will fall on the ground, and I'm like, oh my God, look at those colors together. And then I have to make more strips based on that. So here it is, but you'll get to see it next. So now I'm living in Silver City, and this is one of the pieces that I made for the show here. And I'm trying to block out a specific size. And again, my stripes and zigzag. It's on the diagonal, but it's still zigzag. I don't know where that comes from. And kind of playing around with it. Finally got rid of the black. And then when you see it in the gallery, you'll see that it's even different from this. So when I work, I'll put things up, I'll sit down, I'll look at it, I'll move it around, I'll take a picture of it, because when I take a picture of something and I look at it in my phone, it's like, it's a different perspective than seeing it right in front of me like that. And so I just am constantly moving things around until it seems right. So this is Big Pink, the beginning of Big Pink. And I blocked out this section that's 9 feet by 13 feet. And it's very spare. And so I wanted to make sure that my proportions were correct. So I put this black fabric up so that this is, and I even measured it, so that I knew that this was how I wanted this to fit. And then I dyed up a bunch of fabrics that I wanted to audition for it. Just kind of played around with placing them, didn't care for that so much. And then, I don't know about you guys, but for me, at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden, pink just popped into my head. And so I dyed up a bunch of pink. And then I was like, okay, where's that going? And so this is pretty much the placement of what you'll see in the gallery. Big pink. And as I said, I dye my own fabrics. And so I work with primary colors, so yellow, blue, and red. But then with the dyes that I use, there could be 4 pure yellows, 3 pure reds, and 4 pure blues. So I can mix any of those together. And so when I do a set like this, I've just given myself 120 new colors that I can use. And I can pick one of those colors and I can dye 1 yard, 5 yards, 10 yards, and it'll match that, because now I have the formulation. Oh, and here's my handy dandy warming refrigerator. So when it's cold out here, when my fabric has to batch, and that means it has to sit at a certain temperature for 24 to 48 hours. And so when it's cold out, the light bulb's now on the bottom. It makes more sense, and it keeps it nice and toasty in there. When it's the summertime, I just put it outside. $10 at the recycling center. So when I do dye fabric, I always dye gradation. So I try to have lights, mediums, and darks in my work handy. Oh, so now we're back in Vietnam, and I'm sitting on the toilet washing out my fabrics. I didn't have hot water, and I didn't have a washing machine. but I had to dye my fabrics, so I had to figure out a way to wash them out. And so this is what I did for, you know, quite a while, and then finally I bought a little washing machine, but I still had to boil the water. But that's the thing too, I think, you know, for me, this was like, you know, you figure out a way to make it work. So now I'm here in Silver City, and I was dyeing a gradation, and now I'm dyeing 3 yards at a time, and again, this is the, squished up in the bin, so you get that beautiful modeling. Here's my dye studio. It's a disaster. And then this little doohickey over here is a washing machine. So I did buy a little washing machine on my new work. I think I want to incorporate the really solid dyed fabric with the modeled fabric. So we'll see what happens. Right now I use it to over dye everything black. Here's my stash. But you know, you never have just the right color, so you always have to, you know, dye some more. Here's my work table. And it really, it's like it just gets to be a mess, because I'm like pulling a new color, I'm like cutting, I'm doing this looks terrible, you know, stick it over there. And the nice thing is like when I finish a quilt, I will, you know, take a breath, and then I'll just very slowly start cleaning off the table until I have a beautiful, plain, giant, clean table to start the next new work. So the next image I'm going to show you is a sneak peek of my new work. And I don't know where it's going, and I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know. And you'll see, you know, if you've already been to the gallery, or if you were going now, it's like, it's so different from what I'm doing, what the gallery has, but I'm really excited about it, and I'm excited to see how it unfolds. Is that a good ooh? Or is that like, oh? Thank you. That's the end of my presentation. My seams are 1/4 inch, and I
opened or
so when I sew my two pieces together, it's a 1/4 inch, and it's not folded open. Not folded open. So it goes. I iron it to one side, both layers.
sounds simpler than it is. So I think of quilting in squares.
Uh-huh.
Is this much harder when you're doing, you know, like odd shaped pieces?
Sometimes, and I have a problem because when I'm a little bit dyslexic, and when I'm working on a piece, I sew things and they come out upside down and backwards, and then I have to rip it out, and then, you know, there's a lot of crying in quilting. You know, and this is different for me because it's not a square and it's not a rectangle. It's this weird triangle kind of a shape. So I don't know. We'll see.
You said you created a lot of those pieces that are in the show in a very short period of time. And a lot of those pieces have similar sorts of designs.
Right.
Was that something new you created for this grouping, or was it a continuation of what you had been doing?
I think a little bit of both. I think there's some new things in there that I hadn't done before, but that some of them were sort of a bit of, you know, it's like I'd been on this particular path, and it just continued through on these new pieces for the show. Mimi?
Do you feel like everything has to be huge?
Yes. I can't, the work, okay, it's like, I try to stay, get a little outline on my wall, and I try to stay in the boundaries, and then, it just it just keeps going until it's done, and they're just done big. And I like it, I like that.
It looks or sounds as though the source of your design is mostly emotional or primarily emotional and sensual. Is that the case? Is that you describe this?
Okay, and I had a problem with this. I had to do a presentation on a quilt, and the woman before me, was like deep in, family and, the signature of her father and that, and I stood there and I'm like, well, it's like I like all those pretty colors together. So I don't know. I think somewhere it comes from something, but I can't tell you.
I just wonder if you've ever noticed a consistency in the feeling when you know you're on the mark. Like, is there something that's sort of that is there a sensation you follow internally?
So when I'm working on a piece, because there's a lot of like stops and starts and, what am I doing? And then all of a sudden, I know I'm on the right path. And that's wonderful because then it's like, yes, it's just so much easier. There isn't that struggle because, there are times when I worked on something and I do cry when I quilt, that it's like I'm never going to be able to create anything ever again. It's like, I guess I'm all done. But then I keep pushing at it and then something evolves. And when it presents itself to me, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I just get so excited. Chala?
You showed us all those amazing photographs of travels that inspired you, and I'm really excited about your future travels, and I was wondering if you would share some of that with us.
Okay, so I'm going to Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan next month.
Yeah.
And I'll be gone a month. I'm also going to be a few days in Istanbul. But I've always wanted to go because I've been in the tile business for 27 years. And so tile, I love it. I can't help it. And so the buildings in Uzbekistan are just like, oh my God, look at all that tile. I gotta go touch it. And plus the Silk Road. So it's, the Ikots and the Suzanis and all of that. So I'm taking like 2 pairs of pants and 3 shirts in a big suitcase because when it comes back, I'm going to have it packed full of textiles. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm also excited to see if it changes my work. What might that do? New color combinations, new direction. I don't know. Oh, and Michael Metcalf, 200.
200.
Thread count. Told you I'd let you know.
There you go.
Yes.
It doesn't show so much on the slides, but looking at your quilts, I don't know the terminology so much, I guess this is piecing. But
Yes.
then all the quilting that's done.
Correct.
Your friend does.
That's
Could you
what
talk-
Nancy does.
Yeah, could you talk about that and why you included that? Or-
She could do
Well,
what?
and what the artistic reason was for that.
I don't like people sewing all over my quilts. So I came up, the best solution for me is to just have it be it's 1/8 inch strip, just 1/8 inch sewing. And it gives it almost a woven texture. If you look at it from afar, it gives it some texture. So I just, that's why.
Which one?
Bye. Yeah, so, and she came over to my house and looked at some of my new work, and so it's gonna get quilted differently. And again, this is really hard for me because, you know, I did all this work piecing all this stuff together, and here's somebody's like marking all over my work. And the other thing too is we always use a gray thread, and so when I get it back from her, I'm like, well, that's not as bright as it was, you know, so it really changes that intensity of color.
But
Yes.
you're committed to that,
Yeah.
right? To the gray thread.
And for these pieces, for the new work, I think it'll be different. Yes.
You seem really prolific with your work. Could you talk a little bit about your work balance and how you kind of schedule your projects, if you do, or if you go through certain phases where you're working all the time, or if you have a really regimented schedule with the time that you're quilting?
Well, okay, when Faye told me it was December 2019, I'm like, oh, uh-oh. And so I was really amazed at how I was able to turn it on. And I was in my studio at 8 in the morning. I'd come upstairs, I'd have lunch and a nap, and I'd go back downstairs about 1:30, 2 o'clock, I guess, and I'd work until about 4. And then I'd come upstairs because I have to do handwork, which I hate. A lot of my friends say, well, it's so, you know, it's like meditative. And I'm like, what? And so then I'd like put on really bad TV, and I just, you know, do the facings. So I was putting in about 7 hours or so a day. 7 days, there's 7 days in a week, 7 days a week, and to get this work done. Now that I don't have this pressure, you know, it's like I go downstairs, you know, again around 8 or 9, and I'll work for 3 or 4 hours, and then that'll be enough for that, and then I'll start knitting a sweater in the afternoon. So, you know, it just depends. And if I'm really excited about a piece, then I can work all day on it. Yes.
What's your history for childhood art? Have you always done art? Has it always been textiles?
So I was actually talking to somebody, I don't know who it was, and it kind of made me think a little bit because at an early age, my mom was curating art shows. And so I've been around artists. And as I said, I cannot draw, but my mom would get, you know, those big pads of newsprint, that weird yellowy browny paper, and we'd set it up outside and get tempera paints, just go crazy, you know, with color. And so I've always been just kind of like that. I don't know. And then the textiles, because somebody the other day asked me, well, why don't you paint? It's because I love the touch. I love the feel of the fabric. I love ironing that seam, and it's so beautiful and crisp, and you know, that's the kind of stuff I really like. No more? Yes?
When you do your stripes, what is the smallest stripe that you have sewn?
So I'll cut the fabric 3/4 of an inch, and then I take in 1/4 inch seam on either side, so that I end up with a 1/4 inch stripe. And that's, you know, that's the uptightness. It's like when I do that, that's with a ruler. Yes?
You know, you're working really big and your pieces get bigger and bigger. I assume you're not using the same sewing machine you're using in Vietnam.
No.
I was thinking about the challenge, the awkwardness, you know, having done some very primitive sewing with big pieces. Can you talk about the machine you use and maybe your approach as things get bigger?
It's hard. I mean, because they start to weigh a lot. They're hard to maneuver. The way I have I think it's a juki, and it still just only goes frontwards and backwards. and it has a little speed thing, so there's a tortoise on the bottom and a hare at the top, and I'm up at the hare, you know, I'm just like, "Meow." And I have, the way I have it set up, so I have a table that my machine sits on that's lower than my cutting tables, and then I have another table that comes past me so that it can take the weight of all that fabric. Anything else? Should we go to the gallery? One question.
When you talked about putting it up on the felt wall, how do you then take it down? Do you pin it then, or?
No, because I just start sewing it
You just
together.
piece it?
Yeah, so I piece it in sections, and then it just, yeah, so,
So it's not a huge thing at first, it's small.
small thing, and then it just gets huger and huger. Oh, you guys, I just want to thank you all so much for coming here.